So to start with for today, I just want to review what we did yesterday. We started off with something simple like the square root of 4, and that would be what? 2. And then we did like the square root of 5, and I said, well, that one you could at least know it was close to the square root of 4, right? So do you agree that the answer is just a little more than 2, like maybe 2.1? That ring a bell? You remember that? Okay. So then I said, what if you had like something like square root of 20? Well, then you can break it up into 2 square roots. What would be the 2 square roots here? Root 5, root 4. And only one of those two actually works nice. Which one? Root 4. What is root 4? 2. So then it's 2 root 5. That was the third thing we did. Okay. And then the last thing we did is I reminded you what the big quadratic formula x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, what? Minus 4ac all over 2a. If you haven't got that memorized yet, you need to memorize it. There's just no getting around it. It's like a big, nasty formula. It's probably the biggest one of all of high school. Seriously, I don't think there's a bigger one that anybody has to for math. There might be a bigger one for science that you have to memorize, but I think this is the biggest one. If you count it all up, including the x and the equals, there are 16 parts to it. But some teachers set it to a song, which I told you last time. So then we mostly focused, though, on this part right here. Because it's called the weird word, started with D. Discriminant. Very good. And if the discriminant's negative, you're doing the square root of a negative, which doesn't even exist. So then if the discriminant was less than 0, there was no answers. If the discriminant was equal to 0, there was 1 answer. And if the discriminant was greater than 0, you'd get 2 answers. And I told you guys to write that one down because it's really hard to remember all that. The only one that's easy to remember for me is if it's negative. This is negative, less than 0. Then you can't have square roots of negatives. So it makes sense there's no answers. 0 answers. Okay. So that was the hardest thing from yesterday. Now what are we doing? Well, it's really, honestly, it's just using the other whole formula. So we use this whole thing. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we basically just have to know a, b, and c, and we stick them in. And if once we know a, b, and c, then the problem's easy. Really, seriously. All right, so I want to give you one in this format. X minus 4, x plus 2. Everybody just take that factored form and multiply it all the way back out again. I just want to make sure you see where the quadratic formula kind of comes in. Where do you ever use this thing? So you got these two factors, you multiply them out with FOIL. I personally like first outside, inside, last, but some people would rather just distribute everything to everything. It does work. Negative 4 times the x makes negative 4x. Negative 4 times the 2 makes negative 8. And then there'd be this and this, which would make an x squared. And this, which would make a 2x. And in whatever order you do it, you just got to multiply everything together. And do you guys agree that that came out to x squared minus 2x minus 8? You with me on that? Now, what's a, b, and c? Talked about these yesterday. I like you to write a equals, b equals, c equals. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is they say, a is 1x. No, it's not. It's just a number. A is a number, b is a number, c is a number. So everybody write down what are a, b, and c. Write down a, b, c. All right. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn and compare your answers to the kid next to you. This is not supposed to be a hard question, but every time, now and then, people mess up the negatives, especially. All right? Compare with the kid sitting next to you.
Yeah.
EJ, what'd you get?
A1.
Yep.
B -2.
Yep.
C -8.
Very good. That's how you get the A, the B, the C. All right. Let's do a weirder one, though. X squared minus 5x equals 6. Now what's A, B, and C? Hint, you can't even start until you do something first. Yep. Now you could tell me what A, B, and C are. If you tried to do it before, you'd have messed up the 6. If you'd have just thought, well, it's 1 and -5 and 6. Nope. It's 1, -5, and -6. Okay. So now we actually have to put these into the quadratic formula. That's the scary part. And it's not that bad. Everybody start. We're going to use this one. We have it all so nice and set up, and I had everybody write what it was. Okay, we're going to use this one, and we're going to put this into the quadratic formula. So personally, I would write the quadratic formula out, but I'm so good at it because I've done it for so long that I would write x equals negative, and I'd put a parenthesis because I know I'm going to put the b in there because I have it memorized. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. Notice I didn't put a b. I just put a parenthesis. Minus 4ac, and the a and the c are parentheses because they're empty spots where I can drop in all over to parentheses. See what I did there? Now, if you're not that good at it yet, maybe you should have put b, A, C all over A. All right, so now this is all ready to go. It's just a matter of you sticking the numbers in, and can you handle the complication underneath the square root? This complication most people can handle. You put the -2 here, and then you just have to handle there's 2 negatives. Oh dear, makes it positive. That's easy. But this -b part pales in comparison to all of the stuff underneath the root. So there, I got to put in b, which is -2, square it, minus 4 times a, which was over here, it was 1. C is -8, all over 2a, and again, a was 1. I have a decent short-term memory, so yeah. Can you simplify that? That's really the hard part. A, can you remember the formula? And B, can you simplify that? So do your best. I'll warn you, almost all the mistakes, when I'm grading the test on this, I guarantee you, people aren't going to make mistakes anywhere else except underneath the root. Maybe some kid will forget the double negative, maybe. But the stuff under the root is the only really hard part. So what's -2 squared, Ian? Zooming in on the stuff under the root here.
4.
It's 4, yep. And then I personally do it this way. I got 2 negatives. So that means this whole thing is plus, and then I ignore the 1 because times 1 doesn't even do anything. So then it's plus 8 times 4. What's 8 times 4? 32. And then there was this 4 here that you already said. So the 32 plus the 4 makes 36. Sweet. It came out to a perfect square. Square root of 36. So then I'm going to simplify this, which is 2, plus and minus the square root of 36 all over 2. Please don't be like some of my pre-calc kids who started the year thinking you just cancel these 2's. No, you can't. That's part of an add problem on the top. If you had 5 plus 1 over 5, that's like 6 over 5. You can't just cancel this and say it's 1. It's not the same as 6 over 5. You can't cancel things like that, not when there's a plus in here. Okay, so those 2's cannot be canceled. But the square root of 36 could be done. What is it? It's 6. So that's 6. 2 plus and minus 6 all over 2. Can I cancel the 2's now? No, it's still part of a plus. So really, this is 2 answers kind of squished into one. So you go and do it once with plus, 2 plus the 6 over 2, and then you do it once with minus, 2 minus the 6 over 2. And you get 2 separate answers. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And 2 minus 6 is negative 4 divided by 2. And negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. There's my 2 answers. And guess what? At the very beginning, I could have told you the answers were going to be 4 and negative 2 a long time ago because that's factored. That's why I say if you can factor it, you should. Do you get I got the same exact 2 answers? All that work to get the same exact answers that we could have got in the first place? Yeah, that's why factoring is the king. Factoring's so much faster. The quadratic formula, though, always works. Factoring doesn't always work. Let me show you what I mean. Because some kids are going to say, I'm just going to always factor. Yeah, that's great, but what if it doesn't factor? That one, you can try factoring all day and you never figure it out. There's no way to factor that thing. But you can use the quadratic formula. So, the missing number is a 1. I'll kill the suspense there. Would you please take this one and do the quadratic formula to it? What it really means is you're finding the x-intercepts by using the quadratic formula. Now, see if you can fill it in on your own. X equals negative something, plus or minus something. See if you can do the whole quadratic formula yourself. By stretching yourself a little bit, it increases the retention of it. If you just go look at it in your notes, it doesn't increase your retention. Just tell me what day it is, January what? All right, x equals negative b. I'll write it all out just to make sure those of you that are still stretching to learn this get a chance to see it one more time. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If right this second I could give you points for knowing the formula, how many that would deserve the points? You think you got this? Okay, good. We're up to like 3/4 the class. All right, so now I'm going to go back and put in a little parenthesis where all the variables were. Really, I know some of you are like, I'll just put the number there. I'm telling you, there's times when without the parentheses, you'll get it wrong. Because the parentheses actually make a difference in the order that you do the problem. And when there's a variable, it's like parentheses when it comes to the PEMDAS. Okay, so I'd do it this way. And then I go, B is 3. So I put in a 3 here and here. A is 1. There and there. and c is 1. There. Cool. Where did I say the difficult part was going to be? Square root, this part. So, let's see if you were careful. -3 plus and minus the square root of 9 minus 4 is 5 all over 2. And can that be simplified? Nope. There's no way to simplify this. You've learned to simplify them. Like, we've practiced that. Just the other day, we had a bunch. And that one, it can't be simplified. So we're done. Raise your hand if you got to that point. Sweet. You did your first one by yourself. A lot of people were successful. Do you get if this had been a 50? Then you would have been able to simplify it more. Like square root of 25 and the square root of 2, you know? But it wasn't, so. All right, I think we're actually ready. I'm going to give you one more to do before lunchtime. Okay? These take a little while. So we're going to take this one, x minus 7 and x plus 2. And I'd like you to multiply that out. It'll give you your equation. Then you'll know a, b, and c. Then you stick it into the quadratic formula. Then you solve it. Hint, we start with x squared. Multiply this thing all the way out. Get the numbers. You'll know a, b, and c. Write the quadratic formula. Stick it in. I'm going to walk around, make sure that you stay focused to the end. I know it's tempting to be like, I want to go to lunch. I know. We'll pause, and then we'll resume this after lunch. Okay, and we're back from lunch. So, when we had just left, we had just stuck a bunch of numbers into the quadratic formula, and I'm realizing, man, those numbers are so big that it's going to be a pain in the butt. Now, on a test, you'd be able to use a calculator. So, I will be your calculator on this one. 4 times 14. Well, that's going to be 4. Here's how I do 4 times 14. I break it up into 4 times the 10, and then 4 times the 4, because that's like 14, right? So that's 40, and 16 makes 56. Now, since there's 2 negatives, that makes it positive 56. Then you add it to the 25, and you got 56 and the 25, and I'll be your calculator again. It ends up equaling 81. And didn't that work out nice? 5 plus and minus 81 in the square root all over 2. And what is the square root of 81? 9. So it worked out so nice. How did I know it was going to work out? Because I made it be factored in the first place. Let me show you what I mean. Remember this? Remember how it was in factored form? That meant this is going to have 2 answers, 7 and -2. You could have known that from the very beginning. So I'll show you how it comes out to be 7 and -2. 5 plus and minus 9 over 2 is like 5 plus 9 over 2. And that one's 14 over 2, which is 7. And then it's 5 minus 9 over 2. And that one's like -4 over 2, which is like -2. So my point, you could have done this with factoring, and I would not disagree. If you ever can factor it, you should. That's why my favorite saying on the poster over there is, if you can factor it, you should. Because it works so much faster than this. But the cool thing is, this can solve them even when they won't factor. You can still use the quadratic formula. So how would we ever end up with imaginary answers later in this unit? You stick something in the quadratic formula that's got a negative under the root, and you simplify it down and you get something like this. You can actually do these if you use imaginary numbers. That's where there'll be an I in the answer. Now, we're not going that far today. I'm just giving you a little sneak preview. like later this unit, they're going to be that challenging. So you just have to be able to handle a negative under the root isn't like impossible anymore. It can be done with imaginary numbers. I know that sounds totally made up, but the weird thing is that if we didn't use imaginary numbers, there are certain equations for electricity that wouldn't even work anymore if we didn't make up these imaginary numbers to do it. So weirdly, imaginary things helps you to do things in the real world. So strange. Okay, let's find the worksheet. There's a worksheet for today. Everybody get it out because we're done with the notes. Find the worksheet. Open it up. Can you find the notes? I'm just trying to find somebody's I can look at and see what the first problem looks like. Maybe it is. All right, square root of 12, huh? All right, looks like the first problem is the square root of 12.
I have my yearbook for Spanish.
Thank you for showing it to me. All right, square root of 12. Well, what are we supposed to do? You're just supposed to simplify. You're not supposed to estimate it. If I was going to do that, I'd say, well, it's a little less than the square root of 16. But this is the simplify kind. Root 4, root 3, 2 root 3. Who already had 2 root 3 before I even finished? Okay, good. See, those are pretty easy. Let's do 1, 2, skip a few, and get to the first quadratic formula one. Grace, can you find me the first problem that's actually quadratic formula?
X squared.
Which problem number is it?
Number 4.
Number 4. X squared
Minus 10x plus 3 equals 0.
I want to warn you, I looked ahead at the homework worksheet, and there's a couple where they aren't solved for 0. All you got to do is make sure it's equal to 0 before you start, okay? So that's the trickier ones at the end. You just subtract something from both sides, or maybe add something, so that it'll equal 0. Okay, so I know A is 1, B is negative 10, C is 3. You don't have to write that out. You can just know. I'm just trying to make it really clear. Those are the 3 things. I'll highlight them. A 1, a negative 10, and a 3. Now I just got to put them in the quadratic formula. X equals negative B, which in this case is negative of negative 10. And I totally agree. Just put 10 there, because you can do that in your head. Negative of negative 10 is 10. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, b is 10, so 10 squared is 100. Minus 4ac. I just put parentheses for those. Really, seriously, that's what I do. And I'm good at this. All over 2a. That I can do in my head, because a is 1. So 2a is 2 times 1, so that's 2. And then I go back, because I'm telling you, this is the hardest part, is the underneath the root. So I'm going to be really careful in there. A is 1 and C is 3. So now I'm going to be really careful in there, and I'm going to rewrite it out. 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 12. 4 times 3 is 12, right? So 100 minus 12. So I think that's 88, isn't it? Okay. All over 2. And there it is. And on the test, I might have been able to give you part credit because it just isn't simplified all the way. So let's simplify it, since obviously I'm here helping you. Now, if I had a calculator, it'd be easier, but I'd be thinking, okay, does 2 go into it? But I don't even care if 2 goes into it. I want 4 to go into it. Did you know that if 2 goes into something twice, that means 4 goes in it? So if I go 88 divided by 2, and I get 44, and then I divide it by 2 again, and that's 22, then that meant 4 times 22. See, if 2 goes in it twice, so 4 times 22. So that means 10 plus and minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 22. All over 2. And this square root of 4 is 2. Look at how many little simplifies I can do. Now, honestly, I know there's a few kids where this is too far. Like, you won't be able to do it. But for most of you, you can do one more thing, and that's factor a 2 out of the top. I get, this is really hard. Like, this is hard for my honors pre-calc kids. But it's not like it's impossible. You just got to take it one more step. There's a 2 in this, and there's a 2 in that. So I factor those 2's out to the front. And when I factor a 2 out of this, it's really like I'm dividing it by 2. It's not that bad. But that's the hardest part. Because anybody can cross off the 2's at the end. The hardest part was the, I'm going to highlight it, this part right here. Which was factoring a 2 out of this right here. So that's what's going to separate the A's and the B's here, is problems. I think anybody can stick numbers in a formula, but it's the simplifying, the stuff underneath the square roots, that's going to really separate the A's from the B's. All right. So, what is the very last problem, Grace? Can you read me the very last problem?
X equals 2x squared minus 10.
I want to, instead of having you skip it, I'm going to help you with it. How do you get this equal to 0? Minus 1 what? Minus 1x, yes. And that gets weird, so let me help. 2x squared minus x minus 10. The reason it got weird is there was no regular x to subtract it from. Now that you've got this, you know A, you know B, you know C. So x equals negative b. Well, I'm going to start doing these in my head. Negative of negative 1 is 1. Plus and minus square root of b squared. Well, what negative 1 squared is 1. Minus 4ac. A is 2. C is negative 10. All over 2a. And a is 2. So 2 times 2. So 4. And here, I helped you with it. You just got to finish it. It is true. There's 2 negatives in here, which just mean you take 1 plus. All right, I bet you can do it. It comes out to a perfect square. So, and then you'll have 2 answers at the end. 1 plus that and 1 minus that. And then you should get 2 nice whole number answers. Or maybe one of them's a fraction. Okay, and that's all I've got for you for today.